My name is Amber Mitchell, 28, and last month I experienced the most vindicating moment of my life at my sister Madison's engagement party. For years, I've been the family disappointment, the one whose achievements never quite measured up. When I mentioned my successful fiancé Nathan would be attending, my family openly mocked what they called my imaginary relationship. The ridicule grew unbearable as the party progressed with no sign of him. Before I tell you how my family's jaws dropped to the floor when my fake fiancé made his entrance, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by family. Growing up as the middle child in the Mitchell family was like being stuck in perpetual shadow. Our family wasn't just wealthy, we were Connecticut old money with expectations to match. My older sister Madison, now 32, was the golden child, class valedictorian, Ivy League graduate, and corporate lawyer whose name regularly appeared in business journals. My younger brother Tyler, 25, was the cherished baby boy who could do no wrong, even when his finding himself phase extended well into his 20s with nothing to show but Instagram photos from exotic locations. Then there was me, Amber, eternally caught in the middle and never quite measuring up. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When Madison won the state debate championship, I placed third in a regional art competition that no one attended. When she graduated summa cum laude from Yale Law, I was completing my practical business degree from a state university that my father called adequate with a tone that suggested anything but. Our family home in Greenwich was filled with Madison's trophies and Tyler's childhood artwork, lovingly framed despite its questionable artistic merit. My achievements never seemed to warrant the same display space. The one time I won a marketing award at my company, my mother placed the certificate on the refrigerator like I was still in elementary school, only to remove it 2 days later to make room for Tyler's postcard from Bali. "Marketing isn't a real career path, Amber," my father would say during holiday dinners. "It's what people do when they can't figure out what they actually want to do." This, despite the fact that I had worked my way up to become a digital marketing specialist at a respected firm in Boston, managing campaigns for clients with 7-figure budgets. When Madison announced her engagement to Richard Coleman, heir to a banking fortune and partner at a prestigious law firm, my parents nearly burst with pride. The engagement dominated every family conversation for months. My mother called daily with updates about venue options and flower arrangements, while my father spoke of nothing but Richard's business connections and how this union would strengthen the Mitchell family legacy. Meanwhile, my recent promotion to senior marketing strategist went completely unacknowledged. During a family dinner celebrating Madison's engagement, I attempted to share my news. "I'm leading our agency's biggest account now," I mentioned during a rare pause in wedding talk. "That's nice, dear," my mother replied, immediately turning back to Madison. "Now, have you decided between the Westbrook Country Club or the Harborview Hotel?" The only person who ever truly saw me was my cousin Samantha. 3 years older than me and rebellious in her own way, Sam had escaped family expectations by moving to California and starting her own photography business. During her rare visits east, she would pull me aside and remind me that there was life beyond the Mitchell family bubble. "They're all trapped in their narrow worldview," she told me during Christmas last year. "You're the only one brave enough to define success on your own terms." I met Nathan Hayes 6 months ago at a digital marketing conference in Chicago. I was presenting a case study on a campaign I'd developed. He was the keynote speaker discussing the future of tech integration in marketing strategies. Tall with dark hair and intelligent green eyes, Nathan had built his tech company from a startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise in just 5 years. After my presentation, he approached me with thoughtful questions that showed he'd actually paid attention to my work. What started as a professional conversation over coffee evolved into dinner, which led to a weekend exploring Chicago together. Nathan was unlike anyone I'd ever met, brilliant but humble, successful but grounded, and most importantly, he valued my professional opinions and respected my ambitions. Our relationship developed quickly. Nathan lived in Seattle, while I remained in Boston, but we made it work with regular visits and daily video calls. 3 months after meeting, during a weekend trip to Nantucket, Nathan proposed on a moonlit beach with a vintage emerald ring that had belonged to his grandmother. "You're the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, Amber," he said as he knelt on one knee. "Your mind, your heart, your vision for life, I want to build a future alongside you." I said yes immediately, but kept our engagement relatively quiet. Madison's wedding preparations were in full swing, and I'd learned early in life not to compete for the spotlight. Nathan understood and suggested we wait for the right moment to share our news with my family. "Let your sister have her time," he said. "Our happiness isn't dependent on their approval anyway." That maturity was just one of the countless reasons I fell in love with him. While I'd spent a lifetime seeking validation from a family that seemed incapable of providing it, Nathan helped me see that I deserved recognition and respect without having to beg for it. What I didn't realize was that the perfect opportunity to introduce Nathan to my family would come in the form of Madison's engagement party, and it would unfold in a way I never could have predicted. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in April, thick cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing that announced celebration of engagement, Madison Mitchell and Richard Coleman in elegant script. The event would be held at my parents' estate in Greenwich, with a note at the bottom that read "Black tie attire requested." I stared at the invitation for several minutes, my stomach already knotting with anxiety. Family gatherings had always been emotional minefields for me, each one leaving new wounds to my self-esteem. This would be especially difficult, watching everyone celebrate Madison's perfect match while subtly questioning my life choices. Nathan called that evening during his flight back from a business meeting in San Francisco. "The invitation came today," I told him after we'd exchanged greetings. "Ah, the engagement party," he said, his voice warm despite the background noise of the airplane. "When is it again?" 3 weeks from Saturday." "I know it's short notice. Let me check my calendar." I heard the sound of typing. "I have meetings in Seattle through Thursday that week, and possibly Friday morning." My heart sank. "So you can't make it?" "I didn't say that," Nathan replied. "I said I need to check what can be moved. This is important to you, which makes it important to me. You don't know my family, Nathan. They can be difficult." He chuckled. "Amber, I negotiate with difficult venture capitalists and temperamental tech geniuses every day. I think I can handle the Mitchell family. They'll judge you. They'll judge us." "Let them," he said simply. "Their opinions don't determine our worth." After a pause, he added, "I'll handle it. I may not be able to confirm until closer to the date, but trust me on this, okay?" Something in his tone made me curious. "What does that mean, you'll handle it?" "It means you should focus on finding a dress that makes you feel beautiful, and let me worry about the logistics." Despite his reassurance, anxiety gnawed at me in the following weeks. Nathan had business in Seattle that couldn't be rescheduled, and as the party date approached, he still hadn't confirmed whether he could attend. The thought of facing my family alone, enduring their pitying looks and probing questions about my personal life, was almost unbearable. "Maybe I should just skip it," I told Samantha during our weekly phone call. "And give your mother the satisfaction?" "Not a chance," Sam replied. "Besides, Madison would never let you hear the end of it. But going alone is worse than not going at all." "Then tell them Nathan is coming, even if you're not sure. Best case scenario, he makes it. Worst case, you say there was an emergency." The next day, I went shopping for a dress, determined to at least look successful even if I felt like a fraud. After trying on a dozen options, I found a sleek emerald gown that hugged my curves perfectly and brought out the green flecks in my hazel eyes. It was more than I would typically spend on a single item of clothing, but something about its elegant confidence made me feel armored for battle. A week before the party, my mother called, ostensibly to confirm my attendance but really to gather intelligence. "Will you be bringing anyone, Amber?" she asked, her tone casual but probing. I hesitated only briefly before replying, "Yes, my fiancé will try to make it." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. "Your fiancé?" my mother finally said. "When did this happen?" 3 months ago, I replied, twisting the emerald ring on my finger. 3 months and you're just mentioning this now?" Her voice had taken on that familiar edge. And who exactly is this mystery man? His name is Nathan Hayes. He's the founder and CEO of Hayes Tech Solutions. Another pause. I've never heard of it. It's a successful tech company based in Seattle. Nathan's very busy, which is why I haven't introduced him yet. I see. My mother's tone suggested she saw nothing of the sort. Well, I suppose we'll need to add him to the place settings, if he can find time in his busy schedule. The dismissal was clear, and entirely expected. After we hung up, I texted Nathan, just told my mother you're coming. No pressure, but they already don't believe you exist. His response came hours later, don't worry. I'm working on a solution. As the day of the party approached, Nathan's messages became increasingly vague. The night before, he called to tell me he was still in Seattle closing an important deal. I'll do everything I can to be there, he promised. And Amber? Whatever happens tomorrow, remember that I love you and I'm incredibly proud of who you are. I arrived at my parents' estate alone, wearing my emerald dress and a brave face, unsure whether my fiancé would materialize or if I was walking into a trap of my own making. The Mitchell family estate looked like something from a luxury magazine spread. White tents dotted the manicured lawn, adorned with arrangements of white roses and peonies. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees surrounding the property, and staff in formal attire circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly near the stone patio, providing the perfect soundtrack for Connecticut's elite to network and gossip. I parked my modest Volkswagen at the end of the long line of BMWs, Mercedes, and at least one Bentley, already feeling out of place. Checking my phone one last time for messages from Nathan, there were none. I took a deep breath and headed toward the main tent. Madison spotted me immediately. My sister looked stunning in a pale blue designer dress, her blonde hair styled in an elegant updo that emphasized her diamond earrings, likely a gift from Richard. Amber, you made it, she exclaimed, air-kissing both my cheeks. Where's this fiancé we've been hearing about? Mom says he's some sort of computer person? Tech entrepreneur, I corrected. Nathan's running late. He had an unavoidable business meeting in Seattle. Madison raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. Seattle to Connecticut is quite the commute for a party. He's taking a late flight, I lied, hoping it might somehow become true. Richard appeared beside Madison, his attention already drifting over my shoulder in search of more important people to speak with. He was handsome in the conventional way of men born into money, good bone structure and expensive haircuts compensating for a lack of personality. Good to see you again, Amber, he said without actually looking at me. Madison tells me you're in advertising? Digital marketing, I corrected for what felt like the 1000th time. Right, social media and such. Fascinating. His tone indicated it was anything but. Is your +1 parking the car? Before I could respond, my parents approached. My mother embraced Madison first, then turned to me with a critical eye. That dress is awfully form-fitting, Amber, she said in lieu of a greeting. Though the color suits you. My father merely nodded in my direction before enthusiastically shaking Richard's hand. Where's this fiancé of yours? My mother asked, looking around as though expecting to find him hiding behind a nearby plant. He's running late, I repeated. His flight from Seattle was delayed. Seattle? My father finally acknowledged me directly. What kind of business did you say he's in? Tech. He founded Hayes Tech Solutions. Never heard of it, my father said dismissively. It's a growing company, I explained, feeling defensive. They specialize in AI integration for marketing analytics. Sounds very modern, my mother said with the same tone she used when describing tattoos or vegan diets. As my parents drifted away to greet more important guests, I made my way to the bar and ordered a glass of champagne. From across the tent, I could see my Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert watching me, their heads bent in conversation. Aunt Patricia had always been my mother's most loyal soldier in the campaign to remind me of my shortcomings. Sure enough, within minutes they approached, wearing identical expressions of manufactured concern. Amber, darling, Aunt Patricia began, her voice carrying just enough to attract the attention of nearby guests. Your mother tells us you're engaged. How exciting. And where is this mysterious fiancé? Nathan had a business commitment. He's trying to make it later, I said, taking a large sip of champagne. Uncle Robert exchanged a knowing look with Aunt Patricia. What did you say his name was? Nathan Hayes. Hayes, can't say I'm familiar with the family. New England roots? He's from Washington State originally. Ah. The single syllable conveyed volumes of disapproval. And what exactly does he do again? I explained Nathan's business for what felt like the 100th time, watching their faces register polite disbelief. How fascinating, Aunt Patricia said. And you met, where? At a marketing conference in Chicago. A whirlwind romance, then? Uncle Robert asked, his tone suggesting this was further evidence of my poor judgment. As I moved through the party, the questions continued, each interaction more humiliating than the last. I overheard my mother telling her friend Judith that she'd never actually met this Nathan person with a significant look that suggested she doubted his existence. An hour into the party, my father clinked his glass for a toast. Standing beside Madison and Richard, he launched into a speech about the perfect union of two exceptional people from outstanding families, emphasizing Richard's Harvard education and family connections at every opportunity. To Madison and Richard, he concluded, who exemplify everything the Mitchell family values: ambition, excellence, and making the right choices in life. The pointed look in my direction wasn't subtle. As the crowd dispersed after the toast, Madison approached me again, this time with a group of her friends in tow. Ladies, this is my sister Amber, she announced. Amber, you remember Caroline, Jennifer, and Bethany from my college days? The women smiled with practiced politeness as Madison continued. Amber was just telling us about her fiancé who's running late? From Seattle, was it? That's right, I confirmed, knowing exactly what she was doing. What does he do again? Madison prompted. He's the founder and CEO of Hayes Tech Solutions, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. And what exactly does Hayes Tech Solutions do? She asked, drawing out each word for her friend's benefit. As I launched into another explanation, I noticed the women exchanging skeptical glances. How interesting, said Caroline, in a tone suggesting it was anything but. And you said he's flying in from Seattle just for this party? He must be very devoted. He is, I said firmly. And yet, it's been. Madison consulted her watch, almost 2 hours since the party started. The women tittered politely. Important business meeting, I reminded her, feeling my cheeks flush. As the afternoon wore on, my repeated explanations for Nathan's absence grew thinner, and the family's skepticism more overt. My brother Tyler arrived fashionably late, immediately picking up on the situation. So where's this mystery man, Amber? He asked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Did his private jet get delayed, or is he teleporting in? He'll be here, I insisted, checking my phone again. No messages. 3 hours into the party, as I was seriously contemplating a discreet exit, Uncle Robert approached me again, this time with several family members in tow. I think we should call this fiancé of yours, he announced, eyes gleaming with malice disguised as concern. Just to make sure he hasn't gotten lost on his way from Seattle, was it? That's not necessary, I said, my voice tight. Oh, but I insist, Uncle Robert continued. We're all very eager to meet him. What was the name of his company again? I tried looking it up, but strangely, I couldn't find much information. Hayes Tech Solutions, I said through gritted teeth. Right. And you've been engaged for how long? 3 months. 3 months. And yet none of us have met him. Curious, isn't it? He looked around at the gathered family members, who nodded in agreement. Maybe because I knew this is exactly how you'd all react, I said, my voice rising slightly. Tyler stepped forward, his phone in hand. Why don't you call him right now? Put him on speaker so we can all say hello to the mysterious Nathan Hayes. The gathered crowd murmured encouragingly, clearly enjoying the spectacle of my humiliation. I felt trapped. I couldn't call Nathan, he was either still in meetings or on a plane. Either way, a failed call would only confirm their suspicions. "This is ridiculous," I said, gathering my purse. "I'm not going to stand here and let you all mock me." "No one's mocking you, dear," my mother said unconvincingly. "We're just concerned. It all seems rather convenient." "What exactly are you implying?" Uncle Robert didn't bother with subtlety. "I think we're all wondering if this fiancé of yours actually exists, or if you invented him to avoid showing up alone to your sister's engagement party." The assembled family members fell silent, awaiting my response. Madison looked uncomfortable but made no move to defend me. My father studied his whiskey as though it contained profound insights. My mother's expression was a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. "You think I made him up?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It wouldn't be the first time you've exaggerated to compete with Madison," my mother said gently, as though this absurd accusation was an act of kindness. The laughter that followed was soft but unmistakable. I stood frozen, humiliation washing over me in waves. Samantha, who had been watching from across the tent, started moving toward me, but she was too far away to intervene. In that moment, I felt 16 again, inadequate, invisible, the family disappointment. Tears threatened, and I knew I couldn't let them see me cry. "I need some air," I managed to say, turning toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Tyler stage whisper, "Should we send a search party to Seattle for the imaginary fiancé?" More laughter followed as I pushed through the crowd, fumbling in my purse for my car keys. I sent a quick text to Nathan, "They don't believe you exist. Complete disaster. Leaving now." As I stepped out of the tent into the evening air, I had never felt more alone or humiliated in my life. I was halfway to my car, tears blurring my vision, when I heard a distant rhythmic thumping sound cutting through the evening air. At first, I barely registered it, too consumed by humiliation to pay attention to my surroundings. But as the sound grew louder, conversations in the party tent began to falter. Heads turned. The string quartet stopped playing mid-song. The unmistakable whump 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 of helicopter blades slicing through air grew more insistent, impossible to ignore. I turned around, shielding my eyes against the setting sun, and spotted a sleek black helicopter approaching the estate, its navigation lights blinking against the darkening sky. The party guests began streaming out of the tent onto the lawn, pointing upward and murmuring in confusion. "Is that landing here?" someone asked. "Did Richard arrange this?" I heard another guest speculate. Madison and my parents emerged from the tent, looking equally bewildered. Richard was speaking rapidly into his phone, apparently trying to determine if this was a surprise he'd forgotten arranging. The helicopter circled once, its spotlight scanning the expansive lawn. Then, a voice boomed from a loudspeaker, "Request permission to land on southeast section of property. Clear the area, please." Security staff who had been discreetly positioned around the perimeter sprang into action, speaking urgently into their earpieces and directing guests to move back. The party had come to a complete standstill, all attention focused on the unexpected aircraft. "What in God's name?" my father muttered, his face flushed with either excitement or anger, it was hard to tell. The helicopter descended slowly, wind from its rotors whipping across the manicured lawn, causing women to clutch their dresses and men to hold down their ties. It touched down about 200 feet from the main tent, its engine running as the rotors continued their hypnotic spin. And then the door opened. Even from a distance, I recognized him immediately. Nathan stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored black suit, his dark hair slightly tousled from the helicopter, his posture radiating confidence. He ducked slightly despite being well clear of the rotors, a habit from frequent helicopter travel, then straightened to his full 6'2" height. He said something to the pilot, then began walking directly toward the stunned crowd, toward me. My heart hammered in my chest. Nathan looked like he had stepped out of a James Bond film, impossibly handsome, composed, and completely out of place in my parents' stuffy engagement party. As he approached, I could see he was carrying something, a small bouquet of what appeared to be rare orchids. The silence among the guests was absolute. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Nathan spotted me standing apart from the crowd and his serious expression melted into a warm smile. He quickened his pace, covering the remaining distance between us with long, confident strides. "Amber," he said, reaching me and taking my hands in his. "I'm so sorry I'm late, darling. The Seattle deal ran longer than expected, and then there was weather over Chicago." He leaned down to kiss me softly. "Have I missed all the important parts?" I couldn't speak, couldn't process what was happening. Nathan gently wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "You're crying," he said, concerned. "What happened?" Before I could respond, my mother had materialized beside us, my father close behind. "You must be Nathan," my mother said, her voice unnaturally high. "We were beginning to think you weren't going to make it." Nathan turned to her with a charming smile. "Mrs. Mitchell, I presume." I apologize for the dramatic entrance. Commercial flights were all booked, and I couldn't bear missing the chance to meet Amber's family. I chartered the helicopter from LaGuardia. He extended his hand to my father. "Mr. Mitchell, it's an honor. Amber speaks very highly of you." My father, normally unflappable, seemed momentarily stunned before recovering his composure and shaking Nathan's hand. "Quite an entrance, young man." "Sometimes efficiency requires a bit of spectacle," Nathan replied easily. "I hope I haven't disrupted the celebration." Madison and Richard had now joined our small circle, along with Uncle Robert, whose face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "You must be Madison," Nathan said, turning to my sister. "Congratulations on your engagement. Amber tells me you're a brilliant lawyer." Madison, for once, seemed at a loss for words. "Thank you," she managed. "This is my fiancé, Richard." Nathan shook Richard's hand. "Good to meet you. I've read about your work with the Coleman Banking Group. Impressive expansion into the tech sector last quarter." Richard straightened slightly, clearly pleased to be recognized. "You follow banking news?" "I follow all potential investment avenues," Nathan replied smoothly. "Hayes Tech Solutions is always looking for strategic financial partnerships." Uncle Robert cleared his throat loudly. "So, Mr. Hayes, is it? You run a tech company we haven't heard of?" If Nathan noticed the challenge in Uncle Robert's tone, he didn't show it. Instead, he smiled pleasantly. "Hayes Tech Solutions. We specialize in AI integration for marketing and data analytics. We're based in Seattle, but we've recently opened offices in Boston and San Francisco. Nothing on the East Coast yet, but we're exploring possibilities." "And you met our Amber at a marketing convention?" my mother asked, her earlier skepticism replaced with obvious curiosity. "Conference, yes. She gave a brilliant presentation on cross-platform analytics that frankly outshone my keynote address." Nathan turned to me with genuine admiration. I knew immediately I needed to meet the mind behind that strategy. As Nathan continued chatting with my increasingly attentive family, I watched a remarkable transformation take place. My mother, who had barely acknowledged my existence all day, was now hanging on Nathan's every word. My father had shifted into his networking mode, inquiring about Nathan's business model and investment strategy. Even Madison seemed impressed, though she tried to hide it. The rest of the party guests had now formed a loose circle around us, everyone straining to get a look at the man who had arrived by helicopter. I caught sight of Aunt Patricia frantically typing on her phone, undoubtedly Googling Hayes Tech Solutions. "Nathan, you must come meet everyone," my mother said, suddenly the proud future mother-in-law. We had no idea Amber's fiancé was so accomplished. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. An hour ago, they were all convinced Nathan was a figment of my imagination, created out of desperation. Now they were treating him like visiting royalty. As my mother led Nathan deeper into the party, introducing him to important family friends, I felt a hand on my arm. It was Samantha. Holy shit, she whispered. Your man knows how to make an entrance. I was still too stunned to form a coherent response. I had no idea he was coming like this. Look at them all scrambling, Sam said with undisguised glee, nodding toward my relatives who were now jostling for position to meet Nathan. Uncle Robert looks like he's about to have a stroke. Sure enough, my uncle was standing off to the side, his earlier smugness replaced by obvious discomfort. Our eyes met briefly before he looked away, unable to hold my gaze. As the party resumed, the energy had completely shifted. The string quartet started playing again, but no one was listening. All attention was on Nathan, who moved through the crowd with effortless charm, always circling back to find me, making sure I was included in every conversation. When he was momentarily pulled into a discussion with my father and some business associates, Madison approached me, her expression a mixture of confusion and newfound respect. Why didn't you tell us he was, like that, she asked. Like what? You know, successful. Important. She lowered her voice. Rich. Because it shouldn't matter, I replied. And clearly, it does. Madison at least had the grace to look slightly ashamed. Well, he seems great. Really great. He is, I said simply. As the evening progressed, I watched my family transform before my eyes. My mother, who had spent years subtly undermining every choice I made, was now telling her friends about my important work in digital marketing and how I was always the creative one in the family. My father had cornered Nathan to discuss potential business opportunities, treating him with a respect he'd never shown me. Even Tyler had abandoned his usual sarcasm and was eagerly showing Nathan photos from his recent travels, seeking approval. It was vindicating and infuriating all at once. An hour after Nathan's dramatic arrival, we finally found a moment alone together near the edge of the garden. The sun had set completely, and the estate was now lit by strategically placed lanterns that cast a warm glow across the property. I still can't believe you came in a helicopter, I said, shaking my head in amazement. Nathan took my hands in his. I was going to book a regular flight, but then I got your pocket dial. My what? Earlier today. Your phone called mine accidentally. I heard everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? Enough, Nathan said, his expression growing serious. I heard your uncle challenging whether I existed, and your brother suggesting they call me to prove it. I heard the laughter. I closed my eyes, mortified. Nathan, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. You have nothing to be sorry for. His voice was gentle but firm. I was already at the airport trying to get a last-minute flight when I heard that. There were no seats available on any commercial flights that would get me here in time, so I chartered the helicopter. That must have cost a fortune. Nathan shrugged. Worth every penny to see your uncle's face. His expression softened. More importantly, I couldn't bear the thought of you facing that alone. My eyes filled with tears again, but this time from overwhelming gratitude and love. Thank you. No need to thank me. Though I admit, the helicopter was a bit extra. He smiled. But sometimes you need to make a point. You certainly did that. They've completely changed their tune. It's like watching a magic trick. Not magic. Just the sad reality of how quickly people's perceptions change based on superficial factors. He looked toward the tent where my family continued to celebrate. Are you ready to go back in? Your mother is probably organizing our wedding as we speak. I laughed. Probably. Though she'll be disappointed to learn we're planning something small. As we rejoined the party, my parents immediately approached, their faces transformed by newly discovered approval. Nathan, we were just telling the Andersons about your company, my mother gushed. Is it true you were featured in Tech Innovator magazine last month? We were mentioned in an article about emerging AI applications, Nathan confirmed modestly. But honestly, I'm more proud of the work my team has been doing with nonprofit organizations to make data analytics more accessible. Fascinating, my father said, though it was clear he was more interested in the magazine feature than the charitable work. And what's the current valuation of your company, if you don't mind my asking? Dad, I interjected, embarrassed by his directness. It's fine, Nathan assured me. Our last funding round put us at just over $300 million, but that's largely based on projected growth. We're more focused on sustainable development than valuation. My father's eyebrows shot up, and he looked at me with newfound respect that made my stomach turn. Nothing about me had changed, only his perception of my partner's worth. As my parents excused themselves to greet other guests, Richard approached, suddenly very interested in conversation with us. Nathan, I'd love to hear more about your company's approach to AI integration, he said, his earlier dismissiveness completely evaporated. The banking sector is always looking for innovative tech solutions. Madison hovered nearby, clearly monitoring Richard's sudden interest in my fiancé. As the men discussed potential business applications, I noticed her watching me with an unreadable expression. Can we talk? She asked quietly, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the tent. I followed her, uncertain what to expect. I owe you an apology, Madison said once we were alone, surprising me. For earlier, and, well, for a lot of things. It's fine, I said automatically. No, it's not. She fidgeted with her engagement ring, a massive diamond that caught the light with every movement. I've been terrible to you, Amber. Not just today, but for years. I didn't know how to respond. This vulnerability from Madison was unprecedented. I always thought you had it easier, she continued. No expectations, no pressure. You could just be yourself while I had to be perfect all the time. Every decision scrutinized, every achievement expected rather than celebrated. Easier? I repeated incredulously. Madison, nothing I ever did was good enough. You were the golden child, the perfect daughter. I was an afterthought. That's not how it felt to me. She looked down at her hands. I was jealous of your freedom to choose your own path. The way you moved to Boston and built your own life. I did exactly what was expected of me: law school, corporate career, marrying into a good family. I never stopped to ask if it was what I wanted. Are you saying you don't want to marry Richard? No, I love Richard, she said quickly, though something in her tone made me wonder. Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if I hadn't been so focused on meeting everyone's expectations. The honesty of her confession stunned me. All these years, I'd envied Madison her favored position in the family, never considering that her golden cage might feel just as confining as my invisibility. I think we've both been playing the roles assigned to us, I said softly. Madison nodded. When I heard you got engaged, I honestly thought you were making it up. Not because I didn't think you could find someone amazing, but because I couldn't imagine someone who would understand our family dynamic and still have the courage to face it. Nathan is different, I said, looking across the tent to where he stood talking with Richard, his posture relaxed but commanding. I can see that. Madison smiled, a genuine expression I rarely saw directed at me. He adores you. It's obvious in the way he looks at you. Before I could respond, Uncle Robert approached Nathan, his earlier humiliation apparently forgotten. I excused myself from Madison and moved closer, catching the tail end of his comment. Must admit, I was skeptical when Amber mentioned a fiancé none of us had met. You understand, of course, we're very protective of our family. Nathan's smile remained pleasant, but I recognized the slight hardening in his eyes. Protective? Is that what you call publicly questioning her integrity and mocking her in front of her family? Uncle Robert flushed. There may have been some misunderstanding. I don't think there was any misunderstanding, Nathan interrupted smoothly. I heard everything, Mr. Mitchell. Very clearly. You heard. Amber accidentally called me during your little inquisition. I heard you suggest she invented me to avoid embarrassment. Nathan's voice remained conversational, but the steel beneath was unmistakable. I heard the laughter. Uncle Robert's face paled. Now, see here. No, you see here, Nathan continued, his tone never rising but his words precise and cutting. Amber is brilliant, accomplished, and deeply compassionate, qualities that seem undervalued in this family. She deserves respect, not ridicule. By now, several family members had gathered around, including my parents and Samantha, who was watching with undisguised delight. I think there's been enough drama for one evening, my father interjected, attempting to defuse the situation. Drama? I stepped forward, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. Is that what you call it when someone finally stands up to this family's constant belittling? My father looked taken aback. Amber, this isn't the time or place dash. It's exactly the time and place, I said, my voice steady. For years, I've watched you celebrate Madison's every achievement while dismissing mine. I've listened to comments about my adequate career, my practical degree, my life choices that never quite measured up to the Mitchell family standards. My mother stepped forward, her expression alarmed. Amber, people can hear you. Good, I replied. Let them hear. Let them hear how you've made me feel invisible my entire life. How an hour ago, you were all convinced I'd invented a fiancé because you think so little of me that fabrication seemed more likely than someone actually valuing me for who I am. The tent had grown quiet, the other guests pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. And now, I continued, now that Nathan has arrived in a helicopter and you've learned he's successful, suddenly I'm worth acknowledging. Suddenly my career is interesting and my choice is valid. That's not fair, my father protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? An hour ago, Mom referred to my imaginary boyfriend. Now she's proudly introducing him to everyone as though she's known him for years. My mother had the grace to look ashamed. Amber, we didn't mean dash. You did mean it, I interrupted. You've always meant it. I was never enough for this family, and I've spent my entire life trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it. Nathan moved to stand beside me, his silent support giving me strength to continue. The saddest part is, I actually believed you. I internalized every dismissive comment, every comparison to Madison, every subtle suggestion that my achievements didn't matter. I started to think maybe you were right, maybe I wasn't enough. I took a deep breath, feeling years of suppressed emotions finally finding voice. But I am enough. My work is valuable. My choices are valid. And whether Nathan had arrived in a helicopter or a beaten-up Toyota, whether he was a tech CEO or a high school teacher, he would still be the man I love because he sees me for who I really am. My father stood silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to my surprise, he nodded slowly. You're right, he said quietly. We haven't given you the credit you deserve, Amber. I'm sorry. Coming from my father, who I'd never heard apologize for anything, the words were shocking. My mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. We've been terrible parents to you, haven't we? Always comparing, never seeing. The sincerity in her voice broke something in me, and tears welled in my eyes. I just wanted you to be proud of me. Just once, to feel like I mattered as much as Madison or Tyler. Oh, Amber. My mother reached for my hand. You've always mattered. We've just been too blind to show you properly. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia had quietly retreated, unable to face their own culpability. Madison stepped forward, taking my other hand. I'm sorry too, she said. For being complicit in all of this. The moment felt surreal, standing amid my family's engagement party, finally giving voice to years of hurt and actually being heard. It wasn't a perfect resolution, decades of family dynamics couldn't be undone in a single evening, but it was a beginning. Nathan squeezed my shoulder gently, and I leaned into his strength, grateful beyond words for his presence. As the confrontation dissipated, the party gradually resumed its rhythm. The string quartet began playing again, guests returned to their conversations, and servers circulated with fresh rounds of champagne. But something had fundamentally shifted in the atmosphere, a tension released, a truth acknowledged. Nathan and I found ourselves surrounded by family members and guests who suddenly seemed genuinely interested in getting to know us. My cousin Samantha approached with 2 flutes of champagne, handing them to us with a broad grin. That, she declared, was the most satisfying thing I've witnessed at a Mitchell family gathering since Grandma Elaine told Uncle Robert his Christmas sweater made him look like a disturbed elf. I laughed, the emotional weight of the confrontation beginning to lift. I can't believe I actually said all that. I can, Sam replied. It's been brewing for about 28 years. Nathan put his arm around my waist. Your cousin is right. You were magnificent. Several of my relatives who had previously barely acknowledged my existence now approached with newfound respect. My father's colleague Douglas, a senior partner at his law firm, engaged me in a conversation about digital marketing strategies that was actually thoughtful rather than dismissive. The work you're doing with cross-platform analytics sounds fascinating, he said. My firm has been looking to modernize our approach to client outreach. I'd love to hear your thoughts sometime. Aunt Patricia's daughter Chelsea, who had always aligned herself with Madison, sought me out with surprising sincerity. I never realized how difficult things have been for you in the family, she said quietly. For what it's worth, I've always thought you were the coolest Mitchell, moving to Boston on your own, building a career in something you actually care about. These small interactions, while perhaps motivated by the evening's revelations and Nathan's impressive arrival, still felt like the beginning of something new, a recalibration of my place within the family. Madison and I found another moment alone near the dessert table, both of us picking at slices of the elaborate engagement cake. So, she said, small wedding, huh? Mom's going to be devastated. I smiled, appreciating her attempt at normal sisterly conversation. We're thinking about a ceremony on the Oregon coast. Nothing elaborate. It sounds perfect. She hesitated, then added, would you have room for a maid of honor? The question caught me off guard. Madison and I had never been close enough for me to imagine her in my wedding party. Are you offering? Only if you want me, she said quickly. I'd understand if you'd rather have Samantha or friends from Boston. We haven't exactly been close. Maybe we could change that, I suggested cautiously. Madison's smile was genuine. I'd like that. Across the tent, I noticed Richard watching us, his expression thoughtful. When Madison rejoined him, I overheard him asking her if she was really certain about their elaborate wedding plans. We could do something smaller, he said. More personal, if that's what you'd prefer. The look of surprise and gratitude on Madison's face suggested this was the first time Richard had considered her preferences rather than family expectations. My parents approached Nathan and me as we stood watching the dancing that had begun on the temporary floor set up near the quartet. Nathan, my father began awkwardly, I want to apologize for our reception earlier. It was unworthy of us. Nathan nodded graciously. I appreciate that, Mr. Mitchell. Please, call me James. My father cleared his throat. And Amber, what you said earlier. You were right. We've been unfair to you for years, comparing you to your sister, dismissing your accomplishments. My mother reached for my hand. We were so caught up in our narrow definition of success that we couldn't see how successful you already are on your own terms. The apology, while imperfect and likely influenced by the evening's revelations about Nathan's status, still felt significant. It might take some time, I said honestly, for things to be different between us. We understand, my mother said. We've got years of patterns to break. But we'd like to try, if you'll let us. As the evening progressed, Nathan and I found time to dance, swaying gently to the quartet's rendition of a classical piece. How are you feeling? He asked, his arms secure around me. Honestly? Like I'm in some alternate universe. I've never seen my family act this way. Is it a good alternate universe or a concerning one? His eyes were warm with understanding. Both? I mean, it's nice to finally be heard, to have them actually listen to what I've been saying for years. But I can't help wondering if it's only because of you, because of the helicopter and your company valuation. Nathan considered this. Maybe that was the catalyst, but what I witnessed was years of pent-up feelings finally finding expression. You stood up for yourself beautifully, Amber. That had nothing to do with me or helicopters. I rested my head on his shoulder, considering his words. Thank you for coming. For being here exactly when I needed you. Always, he promised. As the party began to wind down, Nathan and I decided it was time to make our exit. We'd made our point, bridges had been tentatively rebuilt, and frankly, we were both emotionally exhausted. We found my parents to say goodbye. You're leaving already? My mother asked, disappointed. It's been a long day, I explained. And Nathan has an early meeting tomorrow. Of course, of course. My father nodded, suddenly businesslike again. Nathan, I'd love to continue our conversation about potential investment opportunities. Perhaps dinner next week? I'll check my schedule, Nathan replied diplomatically. My mother hugged me, a real hug, not the perfunctory embrace I was accustomed to. We'll do better, Amber. I promise. As we walked toward the exit, Madison and Richard intercepted us. Leaving so soon? Madison asked. Time for us to make our exit, I confirmed. Madison surprised me with a hug. Thank you, she whispered, though I wasn't entirely sure what she was thanking me for. We said our goodbyes to Samantha, who promised to visit us in Boston soon, and made our way across the lawn toward the helicopter, which had remained waiting throughout the evening. Your chariot awaits, Ms. Mitchell, Nathan said with a playful bow. As we climbed aboard and the rotors began to spin, I looked back at my family's estate, the twinkling lights, the elegant tents, the gathered guests still visible through the windows. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in at a world where I didn't belong. Instead, I felt like I was choosing to leave on my own terms, with the man who valued me for exactly who I was. The helicopter lifted off, rising above the Connecticut countryside, and I felt a weight lifting with it, the burden of seeking approval from people who had never been capable of giving it freely. Nathan took my hand as we soared into the night sky. Where to, future Mrs. Hayes? I smiled, feeling truly free for perhaps the first time in my life. Home, I said simply. Let's go home. In the weeks following Madison's engagement party, my relationship with my family began a slow but noticeable transformation. It started with small gestures, a text from my mother asking about my day, an email from my father sharing an article about digital marketing innovations with a note saying, "Thought you might find this interesting." Madison called me twice to discuss wedding plans, both hers and mine. Our conversations, once stilted and competitive, flowed more naturally as we cautiously explored what a real sisterly relationship might look like. I'd been thinking about what you said at the party, she told me during one call. About making choices to please others versus choices that make you happy. Richard and I have decided to scale back our wedding plans. Really? I was surprised. The Mitchell-Coleman wedding had been positioned as the social event of the season. We're still having a formal ceremony, Madison clarified, but smaller, more personal. And we've pushed the date back 6 months to give ourselves time to really think about what we want, not what's expected. This was unprecedented, Madison actively resisting the family script. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of pride that my moment of honesty had resonated with her. My parents invited Nathan and me to dinner at their home the following month, a far more intimate setting than the engagement party. As we drove up the familiar driveway, I felt the old anxiety returning. They're trying, Nathan reminded me gently. That counts for something. The dinner was awkward at times but notably different from previous family gatherings. My father asked thoughtful questions about my work without comparing it to Madison's career. My mother showed genuine interest in our wedding plans without trying to impose her own vision. We'd like to contribute to your wedding, my father said over dessert. Whatever kind of celebration you choose. That's generous, I replied cautiously, but we've got it covered. We're planning something small and meaningful. To my surprise, neither of my parents tried to change my mind or suggest a more elaborate event. Instead, my mother simply said, "That sounds lovely, Amber." We'd be honored to attend. The real test came when my mother visited me in Boston the following month, her first time seeing my life there. I showed her my apartment, introduced her to my friends, and took her to my office. Watching her observe the respect my colleagues had for me and seeing firsthand the importance of my role in the company seemed to finally make my career real to her. Over coffee at a small cafe near my apartment, she said something I never expected to hear. "I'm proud of you, Amber. Not because of Nathan or his success, but because of who you are and what you've built for yourself." The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear almost didn't register at first. "You are?" "I am." She reached across the table to take my hand. "I've been thinking a lot about that night at the party, about everything you said. You were right. Your father and I, were so fixated on a particular vision of success that we couldn't see how successful you already were on your own terms. It wasn't just about success," I said carefully. "It was about feeling valued, about belonging in my own family." "I know." My mother looked genuinely remorseful. "We failed you there, and I'm so sorry. I can't change the past, but I'd like to do better moving forward, if you'll let me." These conversations weren't always easy. Decades of established family dynamics don't change overnight, and there were still moments of frustration and backsliding. My father occasionally slipped into his old patterns of comparison, and my mother sometimes couldn't resist making suggestions about how I could improve various aspects of my life. But the difference was that now, I felt empowered to address these moments directly rather than silently accepting them. And more importantly, my parents were actually listening when I did. Nathan remained my steadfast support throughout this process of family recalibration. He never pushed me to forgive more quickly than I was ready to, never suggested I should simply move on for the sake of harmony. Healing happens at its own pace, he reminded me one evening as we discussed a particularly difficult conversation with my father. Real change takes time. Our own wedding plans progressed, with a small ceremony scheduled for the following spring on the Oregon coastline where Nathan had grown up. We decided on just 30 guests, our closest friends and family members who truly supported us. Samantha would be my maid of honor, with Madison as a bridesmaid, a compromise that felt right as we rebuilt our relationship. My mother, to her credit, respected our vision even when it differed dramatically from the grand affair she might have once envisioned for her daughter. In my professional life, I found a new confidence that translated into greater success. I spoke up more in meetings, proposed innovative strategies that I might once have kept to myself, and eventually received a promotion to Director of Digital Strategy. When I called my parents to share the news, their excitement felt genuine for the first time, not measured against Madison's achievements or qualified with suggestions for further improvement. The helicopter moment, as Nathan and I came to call it, had forced everything into the open, all the years of hurt, comparison, and dismissal that had shaped our family dynamic. The dramatic entrance had been the catalyst, but the real change came from finally finding my voice and the courage to use it. As Nathan and I sat on our balcony one evening, watching the Boston skyline transition from day to night, I reflected on everything that had happened since that fateful engagement party. "I keep thinking about how different things might have been if you hadn't heard that accidental phone call," I said. "If you hadn't arrived in that helicopter." Nathan considered this. "The helicopter was just theater, Amber. The real moment was when you stopped accepting their narrative and created your own. That would have happened eventually, helicopter or not." "You think so?" "I know so. You're too strong to have accepted that treatment forever." He squeezed my hand. "Though I have to admit, the look on your uncle's face when I mentioned hearing everything was pretty satisfying." I laughed, leaning against his shoulder. "My family still talks about it. Tyler calls it the helicopter incident, like it's a major historical event. In the Mitchell family chronicles, perhaps it is." Nathan smiled. "A turning point in the dynasty." The truth was, it had been a turning point not because of the dramatic entrance itself, but because it had created space for truth, for confrontation, and ultimately, for change. The helicopter hadn't fixed my family relationships, but it had cracked open the facade, allowing us to begin addressing the reality beneath. I had learned that self-respect couldn't come from external validation, not even from family. It had to start with valuing myself enough to demand respect from others, to set boundaries, and sometimes, to walk away when those boundaries weren't honored. I had also learned that people can change, but only when they're ready to acknowledge the need for change. My family's transformation wasn't perfect or complete, but it was real, a work in progress that required effort from all of us. Most importantly, I had learned the power of choosing my own family, not just Nathan, but the friends and colleagues who had valued me all along, who had seen my worth when my birth family couldn't. As we sat watching the stars appear over the city, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for most of my life. The approval I had spent years chasing had finally lost its power over me. I was enough, had always been enough exactly as I was. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked, noticing my contemplative silence. "Just that sometimes the most dramatic gestures lead to the most honest moments," I replied. "And that finding your voice is worth any amount of temporary discomfort." "A lesson worth learning," he agreed. "And worth sharing," I added, thinking of all the people who might be trapped in similar family dynamics, seeking validation from those unable to provide it. In the end, the helicopter arrival made for a great story, one that would undoubtedly be retold at family gatherings for years to come. But the real story was what happened after the slow, sometimes painful work of rebuilding relationships on a foundation of genuine respect rather than performance and expectation. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't finished. But it was authentic, and that made all the difference. So to anyone watching who might be struggling with similar family dynamics, know that you deserve respect simply for being who you are. Sometimes it takes a dramatic moment to break unhealthy patterns, but what matters most is finding your voice and using it, even when it's scary. Have you ever had to stand up to family who didn't see your worth? Drop a comment below and share your experience. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they are enough, exactly as they are. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth isn't determined by others' ability to see it.